Right, let's begin with this question. The following chemical equation for photosynthesis represents the reactants used and the products formed. So, in any equation, we have reactants to the left, products to the right. Yeah? Our reactants are carbon dioxide and water, products, glucose and oxygen. So what are the two conditions not shown that are essential for this process? So at this level, we simply want sunlight or UV light, as well as we will want the presence of chlorophyll. Or we could also have chloroplasts. Name the gas given off in this process and state which of the reactants produce this gas. Now, to answer this part of the question, we must be aware that photosynthesis is roughly broken up into two reactions, a light and a dark reaction. It is in the light reaction that water is split to give hydrogen and oxygen, and that is the product formed. Right? So this is what we look at. So the gas produced is oxygen, and it is formed from the water molecule. For part 3 of the question, what we want is explain two ways in which plants utilize the glucose produced in this process. So there are a lot of possible answers to this, but we want to keep our answers limited to what is expected and what is common. So one of the uses for this glucose is as an energy source during respiration. Right? It is also used as a storage molecule in seeds and other parts of the plant. As well, there is a structural component to glucose. It is used to form cellulose, which is the building material for the cell wall. So this is what we have. One way it is utilized is respiration, right? You want to mention that the site of respiration is the mitochondria, and we want to point out the outcome of respiration, which is energy, or more specifically ATP, adenosine triphosphate. The glucose can also be used for long-term or short-term storage, but it is stored as starch. That is important to mention, the storage molecule and where it is stored. It could be stored in seeds and other vegetative structures. And finally, one more example is a structural component to glucose in plants. It can be used via condensation polymerization to form cellulose, and which is the main component in cell walls. Notice the mark scheme, 4 marks. So each way constitutes 2 marks. They ask for 2 ways, 2 marks for the first way, 2 marks for the second. So you want to name the process, or in this case, name the storage molecule, and give a bit of where it is performed, or where it is utilized in the plant. For part 4, we want 3 environmental factors which affect photosynthesis for 3 marks. So all we need to do here is simply list the environmental factors. You could do a short explanation, space permitting, as to how it is affected. So if I were answering this question, I would choose from this list. They asked for you to state, which is another way to simply say list, right? They just want a list of 3 environmental factors. It is not necessary to explain the effect of the environmental factors, and we don't really have the space for that. Now, just because the question says list 3 does not mean that you are obligated to stop at 3. You could list as many as you want, but my advice is to list the 3 factors that you are most certain of first. So we have, first of all, temperature. As temperature increases, the rate of photosynthesis will increase up to a maximum of 40 degrees. This is because the reactions of photosynthesis, like all reactions in living organisms, are controlled by enzymes. And if we exceed the temperature of 40 degrees Celsius within the plant, enzymes do not function optimally. So there is a limit to temperature. We need water to be available. Without water being available, the stomata will remain closed, carbon dioxide cannot enter the leaves of the plant, and photosynthesis will not take place. Sunlight intensity, again, as sunlight intensity increases, the rate of photosynthesis will increase up to a maximum. Yeah? Beyond a certain limit, an increase in light intensity will no longer result in an increase in the rate. Yeah? And finally, carbon dioxide levels. The greater the carbon dioxide concentration in the air, the greater is the rate of photosynthesis. It is possible to alter the carbon dioxide levels in a structure such as a greenhouse. Yeah? So in a greenhouse, we could increase carbon dioxide intensity and thus increase the rate of photosynthesis. So this is sometimes an option. And finally, we have part B. Unlike plants, animals are unable to synthesize glucose. A boy eats a meal of cassava. Explain how his body converts the starch in the cassava to glucose. Name the organs and the enzymes involved in the process. So 3 things are important. The first thing that is important, the mark allocation. This is worth 4 marks. They want organs and they want enzymes. Right? That is what your focus in this question will be. Now this question really concerns digestion. And there are 2 types of digestion, mechanical and chemical. Mechanical digestion includes mastication or chewing, peristalsis, or the action of bile. All 3 of them are considered mechanical digestion. For the purpose of this question, I will not include peristalsis and the action of bile. Not really relevant for 4 marks. In terms of the organs that we will focus on, the digestion of starch begins in the mouth and is completed in the small intestine. The stomach, not involved. The stomach is strictly for the digestion of proteins. So, to focus on the question, the organs that we're looking at, mouth, small intestine, I'm going to make small mention of mechanical digestion in terms of chewing in the mouth, and then we're going to include the enzymes involved in starch, and that should give us our 4 marks. So this is roughly what my answer will look like. Notice I segmented my answer into the 2 regions, mouth and small intestine. So I have named the organs involved. That will give me 2 of the 4 marks. As for the enzymes involved, the breakdown of starch begins in the mouth. via the action of salivary amylase, which will convert the polymer starch into the disaccharide maltose. Now the digestion of starch will begin in the mouth, but depending on your level of enthusiasm, it may not be completed or may not be significantly completed in the mouth. Yeah? The bulk of the digestion occurs in the small intestine, where pancreatic amylase continues the breakdown of starch into maltose, and then the maltose is acted upon by another enzyme, maltase, to break down this maltose into glucose. Okay? So we go from the polysaccharide starch to the disaccharide maltose, and finally the monosaccharide glucose. And this will complete your answer, okay, as to the enzymes involved. So you may get 1 mark for one of the amylase enzymes and another mark for the maltase enzyme, and that will in total give you your 4 marks.